Now at 5, from police to parks, the Portland City Council approving a preliminary budget as the city stares down a more than $100 million budget crisis. Following a marathon session that lasted more than 12 hours, councilors ultimately voted 7-5 to divert $2 million in proposed funding from police to maintain parks, a decision not sitting well with some tonight. Good evening. Thanks a lot for joining us, everybody. I'm Steve Dunn.
I'm Deborah Knapp. Before we dive into the new reaction tonight, let's talk about how Portland got here. The city says its historic budget shortfalls driven by two main factors: falling revenue and higher costs. On the revenue side, the city says its economy is still recovering from the pandemic. Many downtown buildings struggle with high vacancy rates, pushing down their value and tax revenue. Tourism is below pre-pandemic levels. Parking revenues down, and some one-time funding resources, which funded everything from homeless shelters to gun violence prevention, have dried up.
Meanwhile, the city says costs are climbing. Inflation has increased prices on things like equipment, materials, services, software, insurance, and maintenance. Over the past 10 years, the city says personnel costs have risen faster than inflation due to salary increases, health care insurance, and retirement benefits. The city also cites high overtime costs due to a shortage of police officers and firefighters, among other factors. All that brings us to where Portland is tonight.
Facing a multi-million-dollar budget crisis that results in controversial cuts to services and higher costs for you.
We are on your side tonight with team coverage. K2 Shelby Slaughter is standing by with what Portlanders will now be on the hook for. K2's Wright Gazaway is digging into how the vote could impact Mayor Keith Wilson's goals to make Portland safer.
We do want to start with K2's Christina Giardinelli, tracking reaction from Portland Police Chief Bob Day about what the vote means for his department or his bureau. Christina, he's not happy.
No, he's not, Deb, and neither were some of the councilors. The mayor's budget would have increased the police bureau's fund by $11 million, and it would have cut the fund for parks like this one by about $10 million. As you mentioned earlier last night, the councilors took $2 million away from the police increase and brought it back here to parks.
Portland Police Chief Bob Day visiting the site of a drug enforcement mission in Southeast Portland. It comes right after Portland City Councilors voted to cut $2 million out of the $11 million increase Day's department was set to get.
Programs like this could suffer. This is being done on a significant amount of overtime.
Day says the move will not force him to reduce staff, but could impact how much overtime officers can put in. Councilors who voted for the reduced increase say the money is needed to maintain parks. Even with the move, parks budget will still be cut by $8 million. When your department does have so many vacancies, why do you believe you deserve that $2 million more than parks?
Right. It has to really, it's a complicated matter around the funding process and how the city funds the police bureau. But the simplest way, the easiest way to explain it is that we are underfunded overall, and the vacancies help. The funded vacancies help us to be able to have the money to spend on the overtime. So if we didn't have that, that's where it comes from.
$2 million out of an $11 million increase to your budget might seem like a slim portion to a lot of people. Why are you so concerned about this?
Yeah, I think that, as much like all the bureau directors have expressed, is we are in, very challenging times as a city, and, every dollar counts. And that $2 million is an attempt to try and, as I said earlier, restore some of the financial structure to the bureau that's already been underfunded. But I fully understand and see the argument that can be made by any of the other bureaus.
Now, the council last night voted to accept the mayor's budget with those amendments. They'll only be able to make some small changes before that budget is finalized in June. We'll continue to track any of those other changes and the finalization of the budget. For now, live in Northeast Portland, Christina Giardinelli, K2 News.
We reached out to Portland Mayor Keith Wilson, who calls his budget a comprehensive, compromise-based public safety strategy.
He says they're looking at how the decision to remove $2 million in proposed police funding may, quote, impede our efforts to recruit a next generation of law enforcement, first responders who will represent and serve our community, as well as the critical missions that get pounds of fentanyl and human trafficking victims off our streets. Now, one of the mayor's goals for that funding to police was to cut down on response times.
K2 investigator Wright Gazaway continues our team coverage at the live desk. So, Wright, the data shows the response times have gotten way slower in the last 10 years.
Steve and Deb, the average response time to a high priority call nearly tripled between 2015 and last year. The Police Bureau defines high priority calls as in-progress events where persons or high-value property are in immediate danger. From 2012 to 2019, the average response time was 6 to 8 minutes. That grew to just over 10.5 minutes in 2020. By 2022, the average response time to those calls was more than 16 minutes. Last year, that average response time was over 20 minutes. Those are 911 calls for things like robberies, shootings, burglaries, and more. Mayor Wilson said this when he shared his budget in early May.
That said, our first response times, human trafficking, crimes, and theft rates remain at unacceptable levels.
Response times have improved slightly this year. The average is just under 16 minutes, so still long between January and April. That's still double the average response time just 6 years ago. For context, the number of high priority calls has stayed relatively flat in that same time frame. At the live desk, Wright Gazaway, K2 News.
Right, thank you, sir. As we mentioned earlier, several city councilors voted no on redirecting those funds from police to parks.
Dan Ryan is one of them. He says Portland City Council was just repairing its relationship with police. This kills the momentum.
I've been serving since September of 2020, and in that time I've had to make a lot of tough decisions to really get our city back on track. And I really know we have momentum. And last night on this new city council, I experienced what I thought was backpedaling.
He says Portland is a beautiful city that people want to feel safe in. He also says every major city must provide its residents with a top-notch police force.
When it comes to public safety, many argue that parks play a role in that. Councilor Angelita Murillo voted yes to redirect the funds. In fact, in a statement to K2, she says her constituents have overwhelmingly said if given the choice between funding parks or police, they'd choose parks. In part, quote, "My vote to reallocate that increase in funds to offset a massive cut to parks was an easy decision." She went on to say, quote, "Research shows that parks, green spaces, and community programming are a bedrock of public safety because they build connection and belonging."
Councilor Mitch Green also voted yes to divert funding. He tells K2 he's feeling pretty good about this outcome.
In a budget with scarce resources, you're always making trade-offs, right? And in my view, and what I hear from my constituency is that public safety begins with strong and healthy communities, and having well-maintained parks is the backbone of that.
Stick with K2 for continuing coverage. K2's Tanvi Varma is taking a look at how last night's decision will impact Portland parks. She'll have a live report at 6:30 and 11 right here on K2.
And it feels disappointing just to try to keep up with things.
Turning now to another major talking point among Portlanders regarding the budget tonight. How much more will it cost you? This summer, prices on some public fees will go up after the City Council voted to increase costs to help with the deficit. This impacts everything from ride shares to parking meters. K2 Shelby Slaughter continues our team coverage from the Moda Center.
And Shelby, parking in that area can already be very pricey.
It really can. I remember when I was here just a couple of months ago for Kelsey Ballerini, which lets me tell you, if you are going to be parking here starting on July 1st, you are going to be paying more.
Their budget.
You know, the city has to do what it has to do.
Portlanders are on the hook for helping make up part of the city's massive budget deficit. One way, an increased fee to park your car. Meter rates going up a few cents to a few dollars across the city.
We are being overrun with horrible decisions at the federal level, and we're being overrun with difficulty.
People like Ned Haskell tell me it is what it is, but it doesn't feel good. Parking isn't the only thing taking a hit. Ride shares like Uber and Lyft will also cost you more. Take a look at this receipt. See how there's that 65-cent City of Portland surcharge? Well, that will soon go up to $2. Something Portland resident Lou tells me is disappointing.
Feels like in the past our parents were able to make moves in their lives, buy houses, and start families, and it feels so out of reach even at 27.
And parking prices aren't the only things going up. If you like to golf, prices are going to go up by $1 for every 9 holes starting this summer. Reporting live from Moda Center, I'm Shelby Slaughter, K2 News.
Shelby, thank you. And again, the City Council scheduled to adopt the finalized budget on June 18th. That is the final vote. Stay with K2 News for the very latest on this. When we're not on the air, you can always find new details on KATU.com and our social media pages.